Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So, the thing you're seeing on the screen right now is a test video that I captured last night, actually. So, I took what we created in the previous video where we found out where to spawn enemy objects, and then we rendered some green spheres in those areas. But rather than actually render the green spheres, I simply changed the code to put an enemy there. And this is essentially the result. So I think this is actually almost exactly what I had in mind. Like enemies are coming from all directions, but they are spawned off screen. And so that's essentially the impression that I want to give the player. Like there's lots of things all around you, essentially infinite number of enemies, at least in this game mode, but you can never see them actually be created. So this is pretty cool. And the game is already pretty fun to play like this, but there are some issues with spawning enemies with this code, and I figured we'll tackle that today. So first of all, if you remember from last video, the component actually figures out the places to put enemies is a part of the player object. So we don't want that. That's the first thing. That we want to move it away from the player component or from the player object. And there's another problem here. So like, for example, you could just see that there was an enemy spawning in that area. Like if we move away again, like boom, there was an enemy appearing there, and that's of course fine because I'm zooming the camera way out, so the search circle doesn't match the camera anymore. But one of the fundamental ideas behind this is that we should never spawn an enemy right next to a player. So what if there is actually another player standing right here? Like how do we tackle that case where you're essentially spawning an enemy sort of for this player here, but you happen to have two players because it's a multiplayer game? Then this enemy would spawn right next to like a secondary player here, and so that's a bit tricky to solve. And I've actually gone ahead and figured that out already before starting to record this video. So what I did is, first of all, I went to Game Master component and I commented out the spawn enemy function. This is the really old one that spawns enemies right next to our character, and then I just commented out the call to that. And then I added this enemy spawner component. This is essentially how I kind of imagine it looking in the final game. This should be pretty solid spawning code already. We can get rid of those, we don't need them. So so this guy doesn't actually do anything besides spawning enemies and finding spawn points to spawn enemies. So you can either just call spawn enemy, or you can find a point and returns a bool if it managed to spawn, and returns an optional vec3. So this can be null because it has this question mark here if it for some reason doesn't find a good position. And to figure out where to actually spawn things, let's concentrate on this find spawn point method here. You need to give it an array of, or a slice, I guess this is technically, but still like a list of player positions in the game, and then you need to tell it sort of which player this enemy is supposed to spawn near to. So the enemies don't have, like they will be dangerous to all the players, but we still need to like roughly know, okay, in which part of the level are we supposed to spawn this enemy so that it's not like way on the other side of the level from where the player is. So in single player games this would be just one position, and in multiplayer games you'd have several of them. And this is a modification of our previous spawn point finding logic, where it finds a position, but rather than just checking the distance to the one player, it actually goes through all of them and checks them out, and then does the same overlapping test as previously. And so to test this out, I added 3 points in the level, 3 waypoints, so you can see them kind of vaguely. Actually, let's get rid of the nav mesh again. So here they are. Actually, there's one, here's one, and here's one. I added this just so that I could copy paste their positions. So imagine, don't care about this spawn point for now. Just imagine that there's one player standing here. There's one player standing. Oh damn! One player standing there. One player standing there, and one player standing over here. So they're so small that they're a bit tricky to actually hit with your mouse from this. But yeah, these are just like waypoints. You can use them for anything which needs like a position and an orientation in the engine. So yeah, we have one player here, one player here, and one player here. So their kind of search circles are kind of overlapping a little bit. And given this situation, how do you actually find out places to spawn enemies around these guys? And what I did was I took the spawn point visualizer component that we did last time, and I added 3 lists instead of just the one. And I draw the points inside those lists, but I draw them in red, green, and blue, so you can see the different points created for each player. And then I took, like I said, I took the hard-coded paths just out like whatever the editor gave me for those positions. And here we actually do something new. So we get the game object. We actually get the game master game object, and that's the game master game object. Again, remember that this spawn point visualizer component is living on the player component. The player object. And so from one object, we now get like a reference to another object, and this is something that we haven't done previously. And if we have a game master, we capture it like this, and then we get the enemy spawner component, which is this new component here that I created, which now lives on the game master. And again, we need to check that we have one of those, because we might not do that. And if we have, we can capture it and we can find the spawn points. And here I input the positions, the hard-coded positions, and then I tell the system to, okay, find me a spawn point which is suitable for the first player, and then the second player, and then the third player. And then I add them to these lists. So this should give us like a multicolored view of where we can actually spawn enemies now in this situation. Actually, before I do that, I can just, now that I have the hard-coded positions there that are really just for testing, I can remove these waypoints and I don't need them anymore. Like that, we can shut the editor down. Let's make sure we can actually build. All right, there we go, and let's see what we get. So here you can clearly see, like, right, the one position is there, another is here, and another is here. So it's RGB, so red, green, blue. Like the first player is standing here. If the system was to choose a point to spawn enemies around this guy, it could choose essentially any of these red points, and for player 1, which is standing here, it could choose any of these green points, and for blue, any of the blue points, and these positions are now selected so that they shouldn't the enemies should not appear inside any of these players' screens. Right, that's the idea. And so now that we have this, we can take it out of the spawn point visualizer component. Actually, we can just remove the spawn point visualizer component from the player object, and we can plug it into the game master, so the game master actually uses it to spawn things. And I was thinking I would just I maintain a list already of the players, so I would simply, when I spawn objects, I would simply go through the list and spawn kind of for each player in the list. So I would start with player 0, then player 1, player 2, and go back to player 0, and that should guarantee us that we have like roughly an even distribution of enemies in the level, even in a multiplayer match. So let's try to do that. And one of these days we're actually going to have to try out the multiplayer, because I've been talking about it quite a lot, but I haven't tested it yet. So right. So yeah, I added this to the default game master. We have an enemy spawner. I think we can actually move this to the game master base. So the idea here is that if you have multiple game modes, they'll each get their own game master. But there are certain things, such as the enemy spawner component, that we want all game masters to have. It doesn't do anything on its own. We have to ask it to spawn things. So I think this is a pretty good component to add to the base class. It also has some client and server endgame logic that's actually required for the engine to be able to shut down the game and kind of communicate to all the clients that, okay, we're ending the game now. But that's the more important, or shall we say interesting component. And then the default game master has the actual kind of game master logic, and just like we have one of these guys for each game mode, we would have one game master component for each game mode as well. Okay, so let's save that. And actually, we still need to remove the spawn point visualizer from this guy, like that. And now that we have that, we can actually even we can just comment this guy out, because we can actually comment all of these out. We shouldn't need any of those test components right now, and perhaps even do that. Still gonna leave it there if we need it for something, but it should be all good like this. So now then, the first thing that the game master component will need to do is to get a reference to the spawner component, right? Essentially, we do the same thing that this guy does. Enemy spawner component. Actually, we have a lot of stuff here open. So let's close some of that, and we'll add the component here. And we'll want to have enemy spawner component, and I think that's probably going to be what is it going to be? Is it going to be like an optional component? Probably. It's going to be an optional pointer to a component. Like this. And on parent created is where we can get a hold of that component, because like I said earlier, like this enemy character base, sorry, not in the wrong class, default game master, its base is set to game master base, which is this guy, and these are kind of created in order, like first that, then that, then that, and then that. And here is where we'll actually want to access this guy. And on parent created is where we can do that. We could actually already do it in create, because in this case the order is what it is, it would exist there. But if the order was the other way around, if we wanted to get from the enemy spawner to one of those, we would have to do it in onParent created. So I tend to always do it here, just in case, essentially. So we can do self get, do context get parent, oh come on, parent, and then get component, and the type we want is an enemy spawner component, and it's called enemy spawner. Yeah, the C++ API actually doesn't even need this name. Like, you can just give it the type, and it will figure out like the first component of the correct type. I should perhaps do that on the Zig side as well, but currently you need the name. It doesn't have all the type information available currently. Okay, and right. That's not great. How have I actually done that in the other cases? The ones where what is it? Is it player component? Player aim component? I think that it's actually projectile weapon component has a player aim. Right, so we can just set the pointer to null, yeah, and that makes Zig happy. Yeah. So enemy spawner is null, like so. Yeah, it's a bit confusing to me still. Like, you have pointers, but you also have like optionals. I think the idea here is that Zig doesn't allow null pointers, but it does allow null optionals, and optionals need to be checked before you can use them, so you don't accidentally try to dereference like a null pointer. Yeah, that's fine. And then we have the place here which previously called spawn enemy, and so basically what we can do currently, just to test this out, is have like just player 0 position, right? And we'll do like, I think this is how you do it, vec3, and then you initialize this with right, we need to actually get it out of the player datas. Okay. Like, there's probably some pretty easy way to get. I think we can do like const player datas equals self dot player datas dot values, and then we can iterate over the come on. No, we can iterate over the player datas, and they're called the same thing now, but I think you should be able to, I don't know, player data values or something, just to make sure that it doesn't trip on that. Probably doesn't do it. So player data, and then might even be able to do something like that, right? That would give us like the index, wouldn't it? I think that's how they did it in the Zig documentation. Let's have a quick look. So format is what? That's a slice. Yeah, Yeah, that seems to be the way to actually to get these. You get the value and then you get the index. So so if we add like a player positions, and this would be like, I don't know, 8 vec3s or something like that, right? And we'll do undefined, and then we can actually like package them into that array, and this in turn should allow us to pass it into the spawn point thing, and times in spawned enemy, current enemy count, and we'll want to have something like current player spawn index or something like that. Actually, let's not go there yet. Let's actually just make sure this works. So now we should be able to use the spawner component, and we have everything we want except the type. Actually, we don't have the type. What was the type that we used? Enemy type is that, and we can use it. We can use it here still, and we don't need the return type currently. Right, but we actually need to kind of we need to make sure we actually have the enemy spawner. Like I said, we can't accidentally dereference a null pointer. So if we have an enemy spawner, then enemy spawner dot spawn enemy, and we'll give the player positions, and we'll need to turn it into a slice like this, and then target player index. Let's do target player index is 0 for now, and we'll get that too, and then we'll get the enemy type like that. And this should now spawn enemies in our game. Let's have a look to see if that works. No member named values. There's no other for loop. Let's see. Well, how did that actually work? So for can we iterate over this? Let's just actually see. I think there was like values. Yeah. There's the backing array of the values in this map. Okay. And what did we have? Player data. It's an auto hash map. Auto hash map. It returns a hash map. Values. Yeah, like again, I think that should be fine, but no member named values. Really? Is that values perhaps not actually public? Yeah, it's not actually public. That's why. Okay. Well, we probably don't need to to iterate over the values, we can just iterate over the whole list. Let's see, where is there like a four keys? No. Not a hash map. Keys.items. What is keys there? That's an array list. Okay. How do I iterate over things? Hash map remove, clone, grow, clear, ensure, basic usage. Okay, so here we have at least like a while. So map iterator. Oh, okay, I think we might have done this already, right? Yeah. Value iterator, that's how we actually got it. Okay. Yeah, that's how we did it. And we can do the same thing here as well. So let's save that, let it format it for us. There we go. We don't actually want that, and we don't want that either. Something like that, right? So player positions is an array of 8, which should be more than enough, but we can make that, I don't know, 32, which is the maximum client number currently supported by the engine itself. And we have player data, so we have the values, we iterate over the values and get the player data out, and we put that there, yeah. Yes. Okay. Can I do that? Can I just capture I? Nope, apparently not. Apparently not. Well, I'm sure there's a better way, but we can do it like this at least. So uSize equals 0, and then well, we don't want to break there. That was the hack from previous. Something like that. That should work. There might even be some handy kind of conversion function for doing that kind of stuff. Usually is with these things. Okay. So now we can build it. Let's see what we have. Yes. We have things like enemies coming in from around the level. If we move around, we should see that they sort of spawn near the player, even though they are not exactly spawning next to the player. And now, of course, we have like the maximum number of enemies to 10. So let's make that like maybe 100 or something like that. And we can spawn an enemy once every second. We should get a lot more of them. Right. Okay, this looks good. Yeah, this looks pretty good. essentially just what we want. We'll want to actually test this out with several players. But well, the sound that you might be hearing in the background is some pretty heavy rain here outside my windows, if you're wondering. Okay, I think we'll actually want to do one more thing here before we consider the spawning done for now, and that is to do this thing. So current player spawn index, current player. What do we call this? Like player enemy target, enemy spawn target. It's a bit difficult to actually come up with a good name. Whoa. Come up with a good name for this, because target player index, that would be like this guy here, right? And then this would be like, we would increment it and then do self player datas. Actually, we can do player no, we can just do actually I, right? So this will now always be just one. There will be one index here. But what if we actually faked some players here to make sure that this actually does work and it does spawn in the correct places. So let's do I is this is essentially the name of our players currently, and then we have the call it target index like this, and then we do we print out I and we print out the target index, or, that actually that and then so currently they should both be well, I should be 1. That's called self. I should be 1, and the target index should always be 0 currently. Okay, U30. Okay, it's U32. No, it's a U size. Well, let's make this a U size as well, right? And undeclared target again is the self. No, it's just that actually. Yeah. Zig is a bit particular about using U size versus a U32. I think U size is probably like 64 bits on 64-bit systems, and he wants us to use that for indexing into things, which is, I guess, quite okay. Oh. Yeah, so that's used there. Probably have like an out of bounds access here somehow. So that starts at 0. Then Let's force that to be 0 for now, and let's see what the output of that is, because I'm pretty sure that it's actually the spawning that's not crashing. No, it wasn't. Okay. Yeah, I need to spend some time to find out how to get the app to stop from actually shutting down when there's a critical error like that. So okay, we have I0 and target index is also 0. And we'll do like player enemy spawn target index. That'll be 1. It adds 1 to itself, and then it should essentially go back to right, but that was actually 0 as well. Why is that 0? So we have 1 while it is doing that. Like that should be 1, right? But it wasn't. How is that possible? Like it is 1, then it's 0, and then it's 1 again. On server is something that we'll want to make sure it always runs on, only run on the server. That is very important. Yeah, and it was probably marked to be only on the server. Okay, so I mean this looks fine. All right. Self context on server. Okay. Of course, if I is 0, then we just need to return, because there's no player to actually spawn any enemies around. So maybe that is actually the problem. If it tries to spawn an enemy before the... Yeah, okay, now it looks good. Now it looks like what we want. So it spawns in around that place, okay? But let's mess with it a little bit and actually add another position there, just to see that it should like take turns spawning close to our actual player, and then close to our faked player. So we can do something like this. We can duplicate that guy. Oh, come on. Okay, why is my keyboard shortcut not working currently? Duplicate it. There we go. Now it works. Just to mark that. Okay, here let's fake a player. Like, actually, let's fake the player here. So do that. We'll actually need to rebuild the nav mesh because we added a block there. And this guy has that position. So export and then shut down. And let's just copy that position there, and we can do. So this is just a hack. Let's add one to I, and actually before we want to do that, we want to do player positions. I is vec3 init, and then this, and that should be it. That should be everything we need. And so now if our spawner is working correctly, we'll get enemies always following the player, just like we want, but every second enemy is supposed to spawn near to that fake player, like around here. And that looks like it is working. Yes, that does indeed work, just like we want. Excellent. Then our mesh is updated. Good. Okay. Okay. So let's remove our hack. And no players cannot spawn. And of course we might want to actually make it so that if there are no players, it'll just spawn anywhere on the nav mesh. But I don't know if we'll ever have no players. Perhaps we'll just want to stop spawning completely. Select each player as the spawn target in something like make each player take turns as the spawn target. Yeah. Okay. That's nice. We can get rid of this guy, or maybe do we actually want to encapsulate this whole thing inside there? Maybe that's actually nicer. So and we actually have a check there already. Maybe that's nicer, kind of more explicit in a way, like that. We can just return whether or not we actually return whatever that returned, and this would be false. No spawner. Something like that. And package the player positions into an array. Okay. And then spawn enemy. And it's here. So we need to not care about the return value currently, but maybe we'll need that later to actually do something. I'll just put like 2. I think 3 is a bit too long. 1 might be a little too short a time between the spawns. And now we should just be able to play this. Those actually one is not with the current current tweaks. One is not too. This is very easy now. Yeah, let's up the. Let us up the time a little bit. Let's make it like point, I don't know, 6, something like that. Add in a lot of enemies, and then we can just make one small tweak here to our starting parameters. Just disable that by adding like an underscore there. And now the server will run on its own thread, which just makes it so that we can't see those lines. I mean, we could remove the line rendering, but I kind of think it's pretty good to have it there, and if we need to debug it later, if something goes wrong, you don't have to rebuild the game. You can just run it with on like the same thread, and you'll see all of those lines come up. So that's nice. Okay, so now this is actually pretty intense. I kind of like I like where this is going. Like I found myself just like playing this for like 10 minutes or something while listening to a podcast yesterday. This version, and it's kind of relaxing. I can see this being very fun with like more interesting weapons and different kind of enemies and power-ups and whatnot. Right, so like we're approaching the very least, the very like simplest twin stick shooter core loop. Now I think the only thing we really need now is just some kind of health system, so that the player can die, and maybe we'll add some health to the enemies as well, just to have something there, so that like you need to shoot them twice and then they'll die or something like that. Actually, maybe we'll start with the very the most basic one, where like if an enemy touches you, it's game over, and we don't add any health to them either. So it's a one shot kill in both directions. When we have that, we essentially have the very most basic twin stick shooter that you can make. And I've been making these videos now about once or sometimes even twice a day now for about a week. I think I'm approaching the cutoff point for now for how long I can spend working on this game like full time in good conscience. So development might be slowing down a little bit soon, not yet, but in a few days. And I think actually working on this is a lot of fun, and I'm not going to abandon this project, but I need to get back to my main project Slide, because I'm aiming to get the demo for that done during this year. So I'll probably continue working on this and hopefully even releasing it to you lovely people at some point. It may be open source, at least the Zig part, but that remains to be seen. Like I haven't quite figured out all the details that comes with releasing something as open source under the company name, which is what I would want to do with this game. Like, are there any liability issues or anything like that? But it would be actually pretty cool to release this as open source, and people could mess around with the gameplay code and add new enemies and game modes and mechanics to it. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully that's something I can actually do. But yes, I think this will do for this time. Please let me know in the comments below what you think about the game and the project in its current state. Is there anything you would like me to add, any game modes or weapons or mechanics or power-ups or anything really. I think this is a pretty good starting off point for a pretty cool game, but by no means anything to write home about yet. But since we have it in this state where it's actually pretty easy to add new things now, if you have anything that you would like to see, then let me know. Maybe I'll add it. Excellent. Okay. I think I'll cut it off now, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.